tuned into Breaking the Mask of Depression with your host, Diva with Depression.
Hey guys, welcome to Breaking the Mask of Depression with your host, the Diva with Depression. I hope you guys are doing well. I can't believe that it's the end of the year already. It's scary. You guys already know I told you that I freak out about stuff like that because time is going so fast and the holidays are here. So I hope everyone is staying safe and well. No Google facts today because I have a special guest and I'm very, very excited to get into it. So I'll save up some Google facts for next episode. You guys know how I'm always talking about reducing your intake and exposure to the news because it just disrupts your mind, your body, and your soul. And I talked about it in my holiday episode because we are going through a stressful period. We have wars going on. We have race relations going on. We have illness going on. So my guest today is going to share with us how we can reduce the mental strain from the news and the world. And so I'm going to open the floor. I'm not even going to introduce her. I'm going to let her do it herself. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so glad that you came on. I'm so glad that you reached out, when we were in the workshop together. You're my first Canadian guest, so I'm very, very excited. So you could share with us. So introduce yourself.
I'm Sandra Hannebohm. I am a journalist, and I also started my own media company in 2022 called Twice as Good Media. It's a reference to Black excellence, twice as good. And it was really a reminder to me that uh, that we don't have to be excellent to be accepted. And so it was kind of like, as my inner perfectionist kind of telling me, like, it actually does. You don't have to be excellent.
Right.
If you just do it in a way that follows principles, good principles, it'll be twice as good. So I stuck with that. I am 31. I grew up between the East Coast of Canada and the East Coast of the United States. So I was born in Canada, moved around a lot between the East Coast and Toronto, which is, just very close to the East Coast.
Right.
And then the United States, I lived in Maryland, and I have family in Virginia as well, and Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Those are good places to live. I have family in all those places.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in what area of Canada are you in now?
Now I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, on the East Coast of Canada.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wouldn't know either, but I tell everybody I'm a geographical idiot. I don't know north, west, south, anything like
Well, okay,
that.
let me go back a little bit because I wanted to take a couple notes for today, and I've
Okay.
been thinking about I've been thinking about labels and
Okay.
how when you meet someone, obviously they're forced to make some assumptions about you,
Right.
right? And what are the stories that I want to tell? So if you'd like to allow me, I can share a little story about a
Oh no.
hobby that I have.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One of my hobbies lately has been tracing my genealogy. And I try to recreate the lives of each of my ancestors based on whatever I know about their life and the history of the time.
Wow.
So, and I've been doing this for like about a year. It's actually fun. Maybe I'm a nerd, but um, so my eldest ancestor in the United States was an enslaved person who they named Jacob Purnell. He was born in Virginia, and
Wow.
he was transferred to Natchez, Mississippi, and that's where he started a family when he was 17 years old. And then on my father's side, my father's white and he's German Canadian.
Hmm.
On my dad's side, my great great grandmother, she survived the communist Russian Revolution. And because she was part Polish and German, and living in an area that was sometimes occupied by Russians, sometimes occupied by Germans, she survived the revolution, and then she survived the Polish massacres of 1943, where she lived in Volhynia, which is in Ukraine. So we're German, Russian, and Polish. That's just my
Wow.
little, yeah, one of the stories that colors my universe.
Wow. It's fascinating. And you said that your ancestor is from Virginia. Does it tell you what part of Virginia, or it's just Virginia?
No, I mean, this person who is the eldest ancestor of mine was reported as born in 1810, which
Wow.
is just before slaveholders were required to register.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I know, and I'm a nerd too, but I know that my last name is Hairston, and a lot of the Hairstons are in Danville, Virginia,
Mm.
in that area. So that's why I said, when you said Virginia, I was like, let me ask, if
Mm-hmm.
that is that's fascinating. My brother, my oldest brother, started doing the research for our family too.
Mm.
And so I know that it's very interesting. I said that one day I'm gonna pay for the service and start
Yeah.
looking it up, but you listen, you did work.
Yeah.
But that's fascinating though. And you need to have it, sidebar, you need to have it because you don't know what's passed down, biology wise, genetics. I always say that mental illness is genetic and environmental. And so if we had that information beforehand, we,
Mm-hmm.
we may be better prepared
Mm-hmm.
today. So,
I think it was your comment about what did you say? A geological
oh,
uh
yeah, the geological idiot.
yeah, but it just brings me back to, the move, like our, the borders that have been drawn are not
Right.
that relevant when you think about, the movement of our ancestors through time was more, you know, north and south than
Okay.
that line that goes east to west that separates the US and
Right.
Canada. Yeah.
Wow. So twice as good media, and that was going to be one of my questions that I was going to ask is where you got the name
Mm,
twice as good. And that was my first thought as soon as you told me the first time what it was is that we always have to be twice as good as the next person to succeed,
yeah.
um, which is not true. But what was your thinking into, did you have any other name for your media company before you went with twice as good?
Um, I didn't. I mean, I had tried to think of a lot of names. At the time, I was taking an entrepreneurial journalism boot camp that was funded by the Google News Initiative, and it was done by an organization called Lion Publishers, which is actually
Mhm.
based in the United States. So I was kind of pressed to come up with a name just so that they would be able to refer to me in my project. And they said,
Okay.
"Don't worry about it; it's not permanent." And I just ended up sticking with it.
Oh, okay. I think that's excellent. That's an excellent name.
Thank you.
It's sort of, the irony in there,
Yeah.
um, compared to what your wonderful business actually is. So how did you come up with well, first I'll say, explain to us what mindful journalism is.
Yeah. So mindful journalism is a framework that actually was developed by the authors of this textbook. The textbook is called, it's long and academic, um, Mindful Journalism in a Digital News Era, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
Um, so that's actually a framework that was developed by communications professors to make journalism more constructive and
Okay.
less destructive. Um, and it's a framework, and it's also a practice to help journalists make sure that the media they're creating
Hmm.
is healing and constructive instead of poisoning and destructive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that, and this is, I know that I didn't send you this, but I was reading something yesterday that said that journalists today are, and that's not all, but the news reporting and the journalists today is irresponsible.
Mm.
And so, do you think that it's irresponsible because of the quality or because not many um, resources and news channels and newspapers are not thinking of being mindful, if that makes sense? Everybody wants
Yeah.
the quick, you know, audience with the murder and the drama and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So do you think that not being mindful is irresponsible?
I just think that the role of a journalist it's very privileged,
Right.
first of all. You have to be privileged to be able to access journalism as a career. And then also being a journalist is a privilege because you're telling stories, and throughout history, stories have a very important role in all of our lives.
Right.
So I can't accuse everyone of being irresponsible, but I would say that it's part of being responsible. Yeah, and taking that role more seriously and applying a growth mindset to that.
Mm-hmm.
And also it means looking at some of the tenets of mindfulness, because mindfulness originates from Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually just a very small part of this huge plethora of things, a small part of the Eightfold Path,
Right.
one step of the many steps to nirvana in Buddhism. So it also means studying what are those things that they've identified are destructive, what are the things that they've identified are responsible, like compassion, equanimity, things like that.
Right. Right. And compassion sort of goes out the door sometimes because they're looking for,
Mhm.
the headline grabber.
Mhm.
Was
It
there any
does, yeah.
I'm sorry, was there any one thing that made you decide that mindful journalism needs to be discussed, needs to be put out in the forefront?
Yeah, I mean, so when I started my journey, I just wanted to create a Black media platform because I just saw a huge lack of representation in news media, especially in Canada. Like when you compare it to the United States, there are hundreds of Black news outlets,
Hmm.
and there are not hundreds of Black news outlets in Canada. I would venture to say that I probably know at least half of them.
Wow.
Just
Okay.
I have not traveled around searching for them. They're just easy to find, and there aren't that many. Um, and Sorry, can you repeat your question for me?
Was um was there one thing that made you decide to put it
Yeah.
to the forefront?
Yeah. So I wanted to just do a Black media platform. And then I started doing research and I saw that there was lack of representation in Canada. But then I thought I want to get more specific and also wider than my local area. Um, I wanted to like create a platform that would definitely, my goal is something that will outlive my own career.
Okay.
Um, and that's pretty ambitious considering the history of Black press here, because it just in Nova Scotia where I live, there have been dozens of Black press initiatives or ventures um, since the beginning of Black history in Canada, actually. Uh, and none of them are around today.
Okay.
So I'm looking at that thinking, okay, without being able to speak to each of them, why aren't they around today? Why don't we have this long institution of
Right.
Black media? And so I'm thinking about how to do something that's more permanent. And I realize that that means I don't want to do something that's purely local, and uh, and I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. So as I started doing my research, I found that there was a lot of Black news outlets who, just like every other news outlet,
Hmm.
rely on clickbait,
Right.
violence without context or explanation sometimes, um, ads, so many ads you can't even read the article.
It's so frustrating. I close out. It gets so annoying after a while.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, well, how do I, like, why do I have a problem with this? What's the name of the thing that I think is better? And that's when I Googled, what's mindful journalism? And this textbook came up. So I read the textbook and I was like, okay, I feel that this stuff, mindful journalism, is especially useful for Black communities and individuals and pretty much anyone who's non-white.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that um, mindful journalism should be more widespread? Because I was looking last night when I was researching some of your website,
Mm,
And I don't see that widespread in the US. So
mm.
has your concept passed along to other journalists in other parts?
Like at first I found out about this obscure textbook. It was published in 2015. And then I'm like, where's the takeoff? Like, what
Right,
happened?
right.
Why isn't everyone doing this? But as I started, I'm involved in a lot of journalism networks and associations, and I do all these workshops and webinars and things. And as I'm talking to different journalists, I'm realizing that there are actually organizations and groups who are pushing this, but they
Hmm.
aren't always calling it mindful journalism.
Oh, okay.
They call
Okay.
it solutions journalism,
Okay.
slow journalism, restorative journalism, reflective journalism.
Okay.
They're really all different ways of fixing it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they're all, the most amazing ones. For example, Media 2070 in the
Hmm.
United States is an organization that has focused on reparations through media.
Okay.
They wrote this huge report on it. They do great workshops, Black self-care for journalists. I did that one of those workshops. It was wonderful. And so, yeah, there are a lot of people trying to find ways to fix journalism, and they're bringing in the same things. They're bringing in mindfulness. They're
Hmm.
bringing in principles of restorative justice. They're bringing in indigenous knowledge. Those things aren't in the mindful journalism textbook, but
Hmm.
I think they very well could be. And the textbook actually is an invitation to other journalists to take this up. So I'm just accepting that invitation.
Okay. Now, you said that there are not many Black news outlets there.
Yeah.
How has your organization and your platform been received in Canada?
Yeah, so far it's been nothing but positive.
That's awesome.
And the question everyone has is, what does that look like?
Right, right.
So that is basically the mission of the whole company, in my opinion, is showing what that looks like and educating people on what that can look like. Yeah.
Um, I'm always, like you heard me say in the beginning, and I've done episodes about this and talked about this. I used to read the newspaper every day, three different
Back
newspapers.
when we had newspapers.
Exactly. I watched the news. My grandpa started us watching the news in the morning, in the afternoon, the early evening, the late evening.
Yeah.
And, I was trained. On the way to work, I'd pick up one newspaper that we'd get to our desk and we switched newspapers amongst each other. And I want to say, um, right before the pandemic, or maybe sooner, I decided that I can't watch the news anymore because I was
Yeah.
soaking stuff up. Like you're looking at it and you see an episode with police brutality, or you see domestic violence, excerpt, and I take those things in.
Yeah.
Like I'm an empath sponge. So I stopped doing it. I stopped watching the news. Like I get my news from clips, on whatever social media platform,
Mhm.
or quick clips in my news feed. So what do you think is the effect that today's journalism has on our mental health?
Yeah, I just recently heard a story from another Black woman I was speaking to who was telling me how she grew up with her parents playing their thing was CNN. They didn't watch anything but CNN
Yeah,
24/7. And she would
that's
say,
my
Mom,
ex does. Yeah.
yeah, and she would say, Mom, can we listen to something like music or and it was but it's this hypervigilance, right? Like we need to know these
Right,
things. And it's actually people who are most affected by collective traumas. Collective traumas are things like 9/11
right,
or a pandemic or gun violence and just the slaughter going
right,
on. Those are collective traumas. And so those are the people experiencing collective traumas who need to know right now what is happening. And I want to be the first to know
right.
because, I can survive better that way, the hypervigilance. Um, it's, but now it's like we live in a world where the information is coming at such a pace, in such a volume
Right.
that I actually just read recently that there were some people who tried to translate human processing power
Mm-hmm.
into computer terms like gigabytes and
Mm-hmm.
processing speed. So the amount of data that the average person consume, or no, sorry, this was the average knowledge worker. So people
Mm-hmm.
who work on computers, in offices, they're consuming more in one day than a lifetime for a highly educated person 200 years ago in
Wow.
one day.
Wow. Wow.
So now, like where we used to, I mean, I think about my ancestry and everything. There was a time when we weren't even allowed to read. It would
Exactly.
have been very important to fight to get information.
Right.
And now it's completely the opposite. It's an effort to stop the flow, and it does have an effect on you. There was another study about, they looked at 9/11, and they also looked at the Boston Marathon
Mm-hmm.
explosions.
Mm-hmm.
And they found that people who consumed, I think it was 6 hours or more of news about something that was a collective trauma, like nine
Mm-hmm.
11 and the Boston Marathon explosions, um, they had much worse health outcomes. Specifically for the Boston one, people who consumed that much news were, in many cases, showed more precursors for
Mm-hmm.
traumatic stress
Wow.
and poor health outcomes like heart disease, things like that, more than people who knew someone who was there, who
Mm-hmm.
was hurt, or someone
Wow.
who was, close enough to be affected, someone who was around the corner. That person was not as shaken up as the people who consumed 6 hours of news about it that day.
Wow. Wow. That's something. That's something.
Yeah. So
And you
it's
don't think about
literally
those
the
things.
more you consume, the worse your health is.
Right. And I like the vigilance part
Mm,
that you mentioned because that's another thing that we don't think, like a coping mechanism. You
yeah.
know, when you have PTSD or you were raised a certain way, you don't really think about how that affects your upbringing. And you don't, I was talking to someone yesterday about childhood trauma, and she was upset. She was not upset, but she was shocked at it that it was showing up now. And I
Mm,
told her,
mhm.
when you are growing up, there are things that you suppress, you
Yeah.
hide in the recesses of your mind, and you don't know what's going to trigger it. You could sneeze the wrong way, and that'll, cause a flashback.
Yes,
And
that's so
so,
true.
we're watching, all of this coming in and not realizing the statistics that you just shared.
Mm.
Like we really, really are ruining our mental health.
Mhm.
And I often talk to my daughters, mostly my younger daughter, about how, it's wonderful that they have access to all of this information, um, 24/7. So, like, if you want to do an essay at 3 o'clock in the morning, you could just type up on Google and do it.
Yeah.
But the downside is that you're giving 2-year-olds iPads.
Mhm.
You're getting fed this crap 24 hours a day. You can get bullied 24 hours a day. And it that's so traumatic.
Yeah.
It's
It is like bullying. It's an abuse of
right.
attention,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that in itself is irresponsible. You know, um,
Yeah.
I'm going to show my age now, but when you had Mike Wallace and different journalists, back then, Walter Cronkite was, a favorite. Um, they didn't do that.
Mm.
We weren't here for attention grabbers and clickbait. They were really telling us the news, the ins and outs, and even telling us why it's important. And
Mm.
and now no one thinks of that. And I guess that's where the mindfulness comes in, you
That's
know.
true. My one criticism, probably not my only one, to be honest, but
Mhm.
one criticism that I have about how journalism was done in the past, though, is that I think Noam Chomsky talks a lot about this. He was like I mean, he's alive still, but he was like a computer the way he would consume news. so fast. And he wrote and spoke a lot about how what we were seeing on the news back then was not all the news, and we
Right.
were getting the impression that this is everything important that there's worth knowing, and there was so much that they weren't covering. But the things that they covered, um, yeah, they were more in depth. There were no clicks. They weren't
Right.
desperate for ads. So they didn't have headlines that had to be listicles so that people will click on them so that the ad
Right.
dollars come in.
Right.
So much more pressure on outlets today.
Right. And this is, this is a question that I sent you because I just thought of this. In the podcasting community, you hear everyone talking about SEOs,
Yeah.
SEO, SEO.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many workshops I've already been to for SEO, how much is in my inbox
Yeah.
about SEO. So when you are, when your platform is trying to make sure that mindful journalism and mindful news is in the forefront, how does that, do you think about the SEO part of it?
Oh yeah, you can't have a digital business and not think about SEO. And it's also really helpful when you're having conversations with people, meetings, and they're like, "Well, why do you want to call it that?" And you're like, "It's good SEO, okay?" But you have to. So I mean, as my training as a journalist was, even we had to worry about SEO, and it seemed like something so trivial for
Right,
us to have to worry about. Um, but SEO just means using words that people can quickly understand.
right.
And my role, I have a full-time job, and my
Mhm.
role there is as a digital producer. So the things that I
Okay.
think about are, how do these different platforms interact with each other, and are they getting the information that they need to see
Mhm.
immediately? So I
Right,
think about that a lot. um, but I think about it so much that there are cases where I see how it's being used, and it's not being used with a consciousness.
I was just going to say it's deceptive.
Yeah, it's purposefully deceptive. And
Right,
like, I understand that sometimes you're on YouTube and you see something that says, I'll just make something up, but why you're too fat. We'll just
right,
say that. And then you click on it, and it could be a video about how we actually should be more body positive. You're not too fat. That's just a perception. And it could be all wonderful stuff. And that's just something people use so that you will click on it.
right,
But that particular kind of clickbait headline is feeding into, I don't know if you would call it a neurosis, but it's feeding into a negative thing that you have
right,
shame about. That's why you clicked on it. So,
right,
it's like, yes, put thought into SEO, put more thought into SEO, like
right.
more thoughtful, more reflective thought into the SEO.
Yeah. Um, okay, I won't go on my SEO thing. I am starting to understand it more though. At first I was like ignoring it, but then I understood how important it was to us to make sure that our businesses are out there. And I will say that especially in the Black and Brown communities, podcasting and news, because our news doesn't automatically pop up anyway.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have to make sure that we are pushing it to the forefront and make sure everyone has access to it.
Although I will say that one thing, how I manage my platforms to kind of avoid that problem, is that in 2024 I'll be kind of announcing this second podcast
Okay.
slash newsletter. All my newsletters are also podcasts because they have audio in them,
Okay.
and delivering it as a newsletter is one of the ways that I don't have to really worry about SEO. It's
Okay.
going straight to your inbox.
Okay.
I just have to
Wow.
worry about what my audience is interested in, not, the broad audience of everybody. Because when you're talking about, I mean, why are we even talking about SEO if you're not talking about thousands of clicks and then
Right.
millions,
Right.
Yeah.
So my next question, and I want to say that we already discussed it earlier, and it could be, my wording. Um, but I want you to explain your thoughts. I was wanting to talk about the race relations. the difference between what goes on here and what goes on in Canada. And I think part of it was what are race relations like in Canada? Because I want to know, how does mindful journalism affect, you know, the mental health? For the past 2 days, they've had a video of a man being arrested and the police officer tasing him for no reason. And she's tasing him and she's excited that she's tasing him. She's like,
Ugh.
ooh. And, you know, he's crying and everything. And so that's something that not only comes through the news, but it's in my Instagram feed.
Mhm.
So I don't know. And I'm going to tell you that I'm totally ignorant to that subject in Canada. So in your own way, you know, you don't have to be specific, just, you know, discuss that in relation to the mindful journalism.
Well, we have the exact same thing. I just saw a
Okay.
video the other day. Actually, it was a local Black news outlet. Um, and I try not to mention the name specifically when I'm talking
Right,
about a negative example, because in a lot of cases they're trying to do good work and keep people informed.
right,
So it's not about taking people down, but a Black outlet had shared a video on Instagram of some people outside a McDonald's being just brutally beaten up by the police, and said, the caption said, police brutality at its finest. Yeah, yeah. Where did this happen? Why did it happen? What are we supposed to do about it? What are the officers' names? What is that person's name? And I see the comments, people are asking those questions. And maybe one had been deleted, but someone randomly said, are you sure this is the one from Winnipeg? Because those aren't Winnipeg police uniforms.
okay,
So what have we accomplished here?
nothing, nothing, nothing,
So we do have the same problems here. Um, but when it comes to race relations versus Canada and the US, I've been asked that before, because I think people are always curious. As someone who grew up as a dual citizen between Canada and the US, I've thought about it a lot.
right,
It's an obvious question. But I've come to realize that I actually disagree with the premise that Canada and the United States are two different places. And
get
going
that,
back to the ancestry, if you think about it, if you kind of picture a circle, and the north is Canada and the south is the United States, there's a line in the middle that
right,
some colonialists decided was the line separating this whole continent,
right,
apparently,
right,
this part of the continent. So in reality, look at the rivers. They go north and south usually.
right,
Um, Look at the movement of human beings from the south to the north.
hmm,
And in Canada, many times we've sent enslaved people back to their so-called masters
right,
through a legal court system that
right,
said that they were, so the Canadian legal system recognized that these people
hmm,
are property which belonged to this person and sent them back to the United States.
wow,
So south north, north south. I don't think that for us, if you really think about the context of human beings, that horizontal line, like cutting down the middle, that's not true. It's really vertical lines up and down. The east coast of Canada and the east coast of the United States have more in common
right,
than different.
right,
For example, in Nova Scotia, where I live, I kind of thought myself at 15 when I moved to Canada. Finally, I couldn't wait. I was like, yeah, I escaped racism, and also Obama just got elected, so it's like over, right? And and I was very disappointed to find out that through researching, through a job I had, I was researching the Nova Scotia legislature and Black representation and female representation in there. And it was like, oh, right, we've only ever had 5 Black MLAs. There are more, MLAs, politicians. There are more men named John before Canada was Canada. Just men named John were serving in the legislature more than any women, any Black people. At the time I was doing that research, there had been 3 provincial politicians for Black politicians for Nova Scotia.
wow,
And I searched for a list. I went to the legislative library and I said, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anyone on the list. Do you have like a list of historical figures, Black
Hmm.
figures who were politicians. And they said, we don't keep that information. And she kind of implied that that would be racist. So, we have a color blindness issue here.
Okay.
We have the same issues with slavery,
Okay.
although we like to pretend that we didn't. We totally sanctioned that. um, yeah, but in Nova Scotia, the very first Black person in Canada who's recorded, Mathieu de Costa,
Okay.
landed in Nova Scotia.
Hmm.
And where I had just come from
Right.
in Maryland is also a landing place for slaves. My
Right.
people were Maryland and Virginia. So, like, did I go anywhere?
Wow. That is something to think about, and it shows that, we take everything at face value, what people tell us, as
Mm,
opposed to what you just shared is the
mhm.
truth, you
Yeah,
know?
and it actually was very dear to me, this completely false narrative that in Canada there were just Black farmers.
Right.
That was so beautiful to me.
Yeah.
Because when I was in the States and I'm thinking, if you said Black farmer to me, I would say, you mean slave. That's what
Hmm.
I would say, especially, from my history classes I was
Right.
taking, not the best school system.
Exactly.
Um, and that was the first time I thought, yeah, a Black farmer, just someone just growing food for themselves and just living life,
Right.
and they never had slavery. But I can't help that was a very comforting myth that I had in my mind, for sure.
I'm going to combine the next two questions because I said, that I sent to you, that we were going to talk about. If you are asking people to be mindful about
Mm.
the news and their journalism intake, how does that affect your job? Like, is there going to be job loss, job? Well, I don't think any job has security anymore today. So,
Yeah, that's good.
how does that affect the role of a journalist?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we experience massive layoffs every year in Canada and the US, I think. I think that's also true in the
Oh
United
yeah,
States. And so, yeah, job security is already, we don't have any
we don't
already.
have any. No.
So I see it as more um, recognizing and honoring the role that journalists play and can play um, in society by acknowledging their uniqueness. So, for example, in my point of view, a mindful journalist would be transparent about what made them write this article in the first
Right.
place. What were you thinking about that made you write this? And then where did that lead you to? And so that would make room for a personal narrative. And that's a big no no in journalism school,
Right.
saying I or me. And if you do it at all, you would do it rarely. You surely wouldn't quote yourself, but um, that's something that I do because I'm here. I'm not just floating above
Right.
the whole situation.
Right.
Um, so really it's acknowledging the uniqueness of each journalist and their perspective and giving them the time that they need. Because it is the 24/7 news cycle that has led to all of these layoffs.
Right.
But
Right.
also as a journalist, journalists are, I don't really like this term, but news junkies. And mindful journalism is especially for those people because it's those people who are most engaged with the.
You zoned out. You faded out.
Can you still hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. It's mostly people who consume a lot of news who are sick of the way that it's done and sick of the news. So uh, journalists all immediately get the need for more mindful journalism because we struggle with it. We struggle with mindful media consumption because it's part of our job to know what's going on. There's a lot of pressure to know what happened 5 minutes before it happens.
Right. Right.
um, so how it actually helps us to limit and distinguish between our news sources. For example, I, the war and that whole situation with Israel
Hmm.
and Gaza, uh, I watched, you can't avoid it. It was all
Right.
over everywhere.
Right.
Even if I had turned off my phone, I would have heard about it from someone I know who
Right.
has their phone on. And so when I'm consciously limiting my exposure to violent and terrifying news, I'm thinking, where is the new information I'm getting? What is the value of the information I'm getting?
Right.
Because I can see people talk about the loss of life, the injustice of it all, um, the people crying, the people screaming, the explosions, the buildings, the bombs, and all of this, and I still don't understand any better why this happened
Right.
and what possible solutions are. So I actually limit that and say, okay, I'm going to turn that off now. I can come back to it anytime I want to. And honestly, I'm going to turn it off about the time when I start crying
Right.
because
Right.
I don't know how you can consume that stuff without feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so that's a sign to close it. And then I still am not avoiding it. It's still everywhere. I still keep seeing commentary about it. I still like someone's commentary and someone else's makes me really angry. Then I turn it off again. Then it's a whole new day. So it's
Right.
just repeating that cycle. And in those spaces in between, my own actual curiosity about the event has a chance to explore.
Right.
So I picked up an old copy of the Bible that I had and started looking at these maps at the back, and it's showing what that area around the Mediterranean looked like in Jesus's time,
Right.
and you see Israel there, and then it hits me that on all of these news platforms, they say this goes back decades. This is a conflict that started decades ago. You have to understand it's been a long time. It goes back a lot more than decades.
Yeah.
And I didn't learn about that from social media clips about the news.
Right. We can go on, and it's interesting that you said the Bible. Um, after I was read at one night after Bible study, um, I did something similar. As I asked my brother, he's a pastor, to explain, the concept and everything,
Mm,
how it relates to what's going on there and today,
mm.
and the role in the Bible. So that's a whole
Yeah.
nother episode.
Yeah. It's just, and that's not to come to a conclusion. That's not with an
No,
agenda before you start that.
right,
It's just allowing your natural curiosity to have space to
right.
explore. Yeah.
And be informed, so
Yeah.
you can make your personal decision based on real facts and real research as opposed to clickbait.
Yeah.
Um, the next question, I guess, will feed into this two-part. Give us some tips as the consumer about how to be mindful and protect our mental health, and give us some tips, if you can, as a journalist and as a reporter, how
Mm,
you can be mindful, practice mindfulness while you're still being responsible for reporting these
yeah.
events.
I'm gonna flip my page here to my notes where I wrote down some tips. um, Actually, maybe quickly I can answer the journalist question.
Okay.
I have been trying to, using the textbook, flesh out that framework in a way that's a little bit more digestible because the
Hmm.
textbook is extremely dry. Um, and on my social media, I'm on Instagram. I posted a eightfold path for journalists.
Okay.
So the eightfold path, I can't recite to you each of the eight things,
Hmm.
but it's a path to nirvana, so to speak.
Okay.
Um, and that, I try not to refer too much to religion because I really think that this works in a secular context, but
Right.
it comes from a religion, so, and a
Okay.
philosophy. So, um, you can transpose that eightfold path into one that's for journalists. So if you go to my social media, which is at Twice as Good Media on Instagram, you can find the eightfold path for journalists that uh, lists out specific, kind of like a checklist that you can
Okay.
apply to any work that you're doing. It's kind of like think before you speak. Here are a couple of things to think about before
Hmm.
you speak. In this case, write or type Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But for consumers, I would say one big thing that has really helped me is customizing my notifications on all my devices. And everybody has a different preference. Some
Wow.
people really like to check their email on their phone. Some people don't want to know if people are emailing them while they're out and about. They only want it on their computer. So I think it's probably a good rule of thumb to just start experimenting with different notifications combinations between your devices so
Okay.
that it's not distracting from your daily awareness of your surroundings.
Right. My girlfriend, actually my girlfriend and a few of my girlfriends and my a cousin was saying that, you have three devices, you have Facebook on all
Yeah.
three, and so they canceled out for two. I did the same thing because
Yes.
I have three phones and I don't need all three of them to give me the feedback.
Yeah, exactly. You get one message and it's bloop bloop bloop.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So that's one thing is customize your notifications. And the goal of that is you're just trying to get rid of distractions from your daily awareness. If you're
Okay,
constantly being torn away from the task at hand, your life, you know, that's the thing we're trying to avoid. And then obviously limit the amount of time you spend on news each day.
right.
I used to start each day listening to the radio because I found that just a nicer way to consume the news, but it did start to make me extremely paranoid. Yeah. So I don't listen to the radio in the morning anymore. If I listen
Mhm.
to it, I'll listen to it in the afternoon. I
Okay,
won't listen to it for more than an hour at a time.
okay,
Um, Generally, good news hygiene, like fact checking, using reliable sources, following journalists that you trust. And if you have information from someone that you don't know, check back on that.
okay,
Double check that. Um, and I think the most important thing is to actually just notice when you're consuming some media that's causing an emotional reaction in you. That's actually
okay.
extremely difficult to just
That
know
is,
when.
yeah, that is very hard,
Yeah,
especially if you don't identify with being in touch with your emotions.
yeah. Oh, yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Um, I remember I have generalized anxiety disorder, and
Hmm.
I would always find these tips that are like, when you feel nervous, start breathing deeply, count to 10. And I'm like, how do I know when I'm feeling nervous? I'm not
Exactly,
used to that.
exactly. Until you're knee deep in a panic attack, and then you're like, okay, let me count.
Yeah, big help. So yeah, just noticing when you're having an emotional reaction to something. And then secondly to that is naming that feeling because we're not used to it. So
Right.
name that feeling. And at that point, that's probably your cue to shut it off for the day, for a little while. Um, and just this is kind of just a caveat to limiting your intake is
Hmm.
limit your intake, but go deeper.
Okay.
If you so just for example, because Israel and Gaza is all over, um, I see that I see all these just completely heart-wrenching stories of innocent people, and I cry. Uh, but then I go deeper. I find a way to go deeper without the news. So
Right.
I'm start to get curious about just the geography of the area in
Right.
general. Like exactly are we talking about? What uh, why what are the origins of this history and everything?
Right.
So if there's something that once you turn it off, you're constantly thinking about it still, then yeah, go deeper. Do go
Research. Yeah.
deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Those are great tips as I turn
Thank
off
you.
all my notifications.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it changed. Like, no, I have too much stuff on my phone. I don't want it
Right.
on my phone anymore. So I adjusted over time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to look at that.
yeah. Oh,
Um,
I actually heard another tip from someone else on Instagram who's like a just a content creator.
no less.
Yeah. They were like, I don't consume any, so I don't go do any social media before 10 and after 10.
Okay.
Yeah, those were her
Okay.
times. I'm sure you could pick any time really.
Right.
But yeah, she's like, I start my day. petting my dog and hanging out with the people I live with, and that's the way I like it.
But that's a good idea,
Yeah.
because I know me. Like as soon as I wake up, I'm hearing ding, 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 and
Hmm.
vibrating and everything, and so I immediately, throw my glasses on and start looking before I even
Yes. Yeah.
put, my contacts in. I'm,
Yeah.
squinting to. Um, this was an amazing subject. Um, I love, and I told you this before, that I love the concept of the mindful journalism. And I can't wait to see what you do with the platform um,
Yes.
everywhere, because I think that is something that we all, worldwide is something that we should be adopting. Um, and I don't even know what to say. But I love the concept. I told you I love the concept. It's something that I'm going to keep following. Not even just your newsletter, but now it's something that I'm really going to look into. And maybe even after I get it together, I'll have you back on, so we can rehash it. Um,
Yeah.
Tell us where we can find. Well, I know you just told me that you have another podcast. So tell us the name of both of them and how we can find you.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Twice as Good Media, which is the one I said earlier. That's the main social media that I use because I limit my use to one platform mostly. And I know that I'm supposed to be on all of them, but I got to do what works for me.
Right.
um, and then the other way that you can find me is if you go to the number 2xg for Twice as Good, 2xg.ca, because I'm in Canada. Or you can also go to twiceasgoodmedia.com.
Okay.
Right now, my website is under construction, so you'll get a redirect to a landing page. But when you get to that landing page, you can sign up to find out when the new stuff is coming out in 2024. And
Okay.
one of those new things that's coming out is a membership platform. So the second podcast is actually for members. So for
Oh,
people
okay.
who want to support the cause to fix journalism and bring more mindfulness into it,
Okay.
especially for Black individuals and communities. Um, so you can subscribe for free and you'll get one newsletter which has audio in it. That newsletter is called Mindful Black Journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty
Okay.
obvious. And so that I put that out once a month, very slowly. And the second is the one for members. That's one additional post a month. And
Okay.
that's more in-depth conversations and interviews. I hope to have one with you as well. And
Yes, of
yeah,
course.
so that's just for people who want to know more about mindfulness and journalism. And you'll get that. My prices are actually in Canadian dollars, but it's $8 a month Canadian.
That's not
Or
bad.
yeah, or 80 a year. And again, you don't have to pay to get the content. That's just if you want to go a bit deeper and hear these interviews in full, then you can do that.
Okay. And of course, I will have all of your information on the website and social media so that we can follow you and keep up with what's going on.
Yeah.
But I
Sorry if you
truly,
can
huh?
you hear that? Can you hear something in the background?
No.
Oh, okay, good. I was gonna apologize. My mom just got here.
Oh, earlier, right, like 20 minutes before we got on, the groundskeeper decided to start the leaf blower in the lawnmower, and I'm like, am I gonna have to go in the closet to to do
Yeah,
the interview?
yeah. Before we started, I was like, okay, I told my mom I would be here all day, and then she's gonna show up right when I'm recording.
Listen, it just tells people that we're living life. We're doing this, but our life still goes on.
Yeah, that's life, baby.
um, I want to thank you, number one, for reaching out to me. And I'm honored that you wanted to have the discussion and come on my platform. I want to thank you for coming on today. I know you're busy. So I thank you so much for sharing your story and your platform with us. And like I said, this is something that I'm going to make sure that I keep in the forefront because we have to, I always tell people you have to protect your peace. And so
Mm-hmm.
the mindful journalism is one of the steps that we need to take, especially in the world we live in today, to protect our peace. So thank you so much. Pronounce your last name.
Oh. Hannebohm.
Hannebohm. Okay, Sandra Hannebohm. Okay.
Yes.
Um,
Thank you.
I will have everything on my website. You can just send me the information. I'll put it on my website and my social media so everybody can stay in touch.
Great.
Guys,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for listening. We did go longer today. And you know me, once I start rattling on, you never know how long it's going to go. But this is something that I believe that you guys can use going forward to try to protect your peace. If you don't already, go to divawithdepression.com and sign up and subscribe. You guys know the drill. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. Not much on Twitter though. And you can reach out. And like I said, look out for the notes and you will be able to get in touch with Sandra and Twice as Good Media. Take care, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, please, guys, please take care. I mean, I'll talk to you before the holidays, but I want you to remember to protect your peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sometimes realize that